Hey there, welcome to this week's episode of Intentional Living. I am your host, Susie Rollins, your holistic health and wellness coach, and I help you increase your confidence through daily intentional living so that you can experience living your best life. In this week's episode, we're going to explore the importance of self-care and how to create daily routines to support your physical, mental, and emotional well-being. How does that sound? So I know self-care is kind of like a buzzword in today's conversation. But I think the thing that gets missed is routine and setting that appointment with yourself for that kind of self-care. And self-care looks different to everybody, and depending on where you are, it can look different. So self-care is super, super important, you guys. It really helps us to manage our stress, reduce anxiety and depression. It can improve your physical health. It can also help boost your mood and energy levels, and it can increase your self-esteem. So there are actually different types of self-care, and I want to kind of break that down because sometimes, like I said, people think self-care is like pedicures and facials and spending money, and it's not always that. So the different types of self-care are kind of broken down into three categories. And it starts with physical self-care, right? So this can include eating healthy, getting enough sleep. Oh my gosh, so underrated. Enough sleep and quality sleep, right? Exercising regularly, that can be a form of self-care. And I think when it's scheduled, and it doesn't have to be intense, it can be moderate, right? It can be easy, doesn't matter. It's still self-care. Mental self-care. So this includes things like practicing mindfulness, engaging in hobbies that you love or that bring you joy. It can also include spending time in nature. That is my personal mental health self-care that I love. I love spending time in nature. And then there's emotional self-care. And this includes things like journaling, talking to a therapist, and setting boundaries. I know it doesn't really sound like self-care, but it does. Self-care is setting boundaries. And I think in one of my future podcasts, I'd like to really go into that because I've learned a lot more about what setting boundaries means. And then it's more for you than anybody else, right? So how do you make self-care important? And how do you set this as a priority and part of your routine, right? So I guess first of all, do you have a routine? Do you have things that you already do? Do you wake up at the same time? Do you have a cup of coffee at the same time? Do you drive to work? Do you eat dinner? Like, do you have certain things that are already in place that are non-negotiables? And I think creating the self-care routine around those and using it kind of like a habit stacker is helpful. So maybe, like, for example, if you're driving to work, listening to something positive and upbeat, that can be habit stacking. So that could be a type of self-care that you do. Because I think the most important thing to do is to schedule these things, schedule the self-care activities, and keep the appointment with yourself. So if you set an appointment to go get your hair done on Tuesday at 4:00, you're going to honor that appointment because it involves somebody else. But what happens when it's an appointment with ourselves? Do we keep it? So I'm going to listen to something positive in the morning. I'm going to drink water on the way to work in the morning. Maybe I can't figure out how to get water in any other time of day, but this is self-care for me, and I'm going to drink water on the way to work in the morning. I don't know, simple, right? And I think tracking your progress of your self-care is important too, because I think it shows you how far you've come and how much progress you've made. So whatever that looks like, putting it down on paper, putting it on your calendar or on an app, whatever, but kind of tracking how much self-care you're giving yourself so that you can kind of go back and look, maybe I need to do more, maybe I need to do less, and maybe correlate that with how you feel and how that self-care has benefited you. And it helps you stay on track with your goals, right? So, if you know me, you know, I like to schedule things. I like to set up routines. And so I'm going to give you a few tips on how to create daily routines to support that self-care for yourself. So number one, and this is something that I say all the time, start small and build gradually. Don't write an elaborate self-care routine that you're going to do every day and then not do it and then beat yourself up. Start small and build on that gradually. That's number one. And I'm a prime example of that. And I can give you so many stories and how I overcommitted myself and it didn't work. And I had to back up and start small. I think being flexible and being able to adjust your routine as needed is important too. Having a routine and a schedule and being flexible sound counterintuitive to each other, but they are not. They work so hand in hand with each other. This is something I have a discussion with my husband all the time about having a routine and a schedule, but then he says there's no flexibility. And for me, that allows more flexibility. Make your routine so achievable and realistic. So I'm just going to give an example. Self-care, let's say I'm going to get a pedicure every week. Well, is that realistic? Do you have time to get a pedicure every week? Do you have the finances to get it every week? Maybe not. Maybe another example is I'm going to walk 2 miles every day. Well, what does your day look like? Maybe you can walk 2 miles every other day, or 5 miles total in a week. So keep it achievable and very realistic for yourself. Find an accountability partner. This is key, you guys. Have somebody who's going to cheer you on, who's going to remind you, hey, you're important. And self-care is important. And you made this commitment to yourself. So finding an accountability partner can be really helpful in this too. And then I think rewarding yourself in some way for sticking to your routine. This is kind of a sticky area because, again, some people think that rewards have to do with spending money, or, some of us reward ourselves with a little candy or something. I don't know, right? So find what works for you as a reward for sticking to your routine. And then I think this kind of goes back to the being realistic and achievable. Self-care can be adapted for different stages of your life, different ages too. So what worked for you in your 20s may not work for you in your 40s or 50s. And what you see as self-care in your 40s and 50s may look totally different. Your life may be busier or less busy. And so depending on that, I think just know that it can be adaptable, and don't compare your self-care routine to anybody else's. Girl, it's your journey. You do it for you. So I think just with kind of that in mind, some different stages in life, be mindful of your changing needs. So again, if it's, timing or ability or whatever, be really mindful of that. Prioritize self-care even when you're super busy. I know, prioritize it even when you're super busy. I think that's even more important to do it when you're busy. Seek help from others when needed. That could be a friend, that could be a coach, that can be a lot of people. So seek help if you need help. And then don't be afraid to change your routine. Maybe you're doing something that you told yourself is self-care, and then you find out you don't enjoy it. Even though maybe it's good for you at this moment, you're not enjoying it. Try something else and maybe come back to that. Maybe circle back around to how can I make that enjoyable? Because I know that's healthy for me. I know that would be showing my body some self-love. So how can I make it more enjoyable? Just remember that you are important. You matter, and you got to show yourself some love, because if you're not showing yourself love, how can you show others love? And I think that's a really important thing to remember. So you guys, that is our topic for today, is self-care and routines. And if you want to know more, I love routines. I love talking about it. I love helping people set those kinds of things up. So reach out. I want to thank you for listening to this episode of Intentional Living. I hope that you have learned something and that you're inspired to live more intentionally. Please subscribe to my podcast on wherever you're listening to it, and leave me a comment, leave me a review, you guys. I would love your feedback. It helps me get better at what I do, and share it with a family or friend. You guys have an amazing one.